Hello, my name is Dennis O'Brien. I'm the founder and president of the Space Treaty Institute, a scientific and educational nonprofit located in Northern California. Our mission is to give each person hope and inspiration by helping the nations of the world to build a common future. At this moment in history, the best way to do that is to develop an implementation agreement for the Moon Treaty, one that supports all private activity, including settlements, while protecting essential public policies. Such an agreement will provide the basic governance that is necessary to support polycentrism while protecting the commons of outer space. How is polycentrism supported by the current international framework? The answer starts with the Outer Space Treaty, often called the Constitution of Space Law. Article 2 of the OST states that outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, is not subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereignty, by means of use or occupation, or by any other means. Although there is debate as to the meaning of this prohibition, its historical context is clear. The prohibition was adopted to prevent a repeat of the age of imperialism and colonialism, when countries with advanced technology battled to control as much territory and resources as possible, causing centuries of war, violence, and neglect. This simple prohibition worked fine so long as the only space activity was national governments doing science and exploration. But people soon realized that there would be other types of activity, some by the private sector, some involving commerce and settlements. So the Moon Treaty was adopted unanimously by the United Nations and offered for ratification to provide legal support for such activities, to create a process whereby private actors could engage in commerce and build settlements without violating the prohibition against appropriation. That process is contained in Article 11 of the treaty. Paragraph 1 declares that outer space is the common heritage of mankind. Paragraphs 2 and 3 repeat the OST's prohibition against appropriation, but then state that the foregoing provisions are without prejudice to the international regime referred to in paragraph 5 of this article. And what does paragraph 5 say? States parties to this agreement hereby undertake to establish an international regime, including appropriate procedures, to govern the exploitation of the natural resources of the moon as such exploitation is about to become feasible. Such exploitation has now become feasible. It is time for us to draft an implementation agreement to make it happen, to provide legal support for polycentric public and private activity while alleviating concerns about the common heritage of mankind. For the past 3 years, the Space Treaty Institute has worked on such an agreement. After much research and consultation, 4 organizational principles have emerged. 1. The legal framework must be comprehensive in scope and support all private activity, including settlements. 2. The grand bargain: trade private property rights for public policy obligations, a trade that is as old as law itself. 3. Defer issues currently at impasse, such as the monetary sharing of benefits, by creating a governance process for making future decisions, sometimes called adaptive governance. 4. Build upon and integrate current institutions and processes. The Model Implementation Agreement does all of that in 10 paragraphs. The first 3 explain how private actors obtain priority rights for activities on the moon, a process we call automatic licensing. If a sovereign state ratifies or accedes to the 5 space treaties and requires its nationals to abide by the treaties, then any national activity on the moon that is authorized and supervised by the state shall have priority use of the location of the activity, including the right to use or remove materials in place. It's that easy. There is no need for approval by any supranational authority so long as the state and its nationals abide by the 5 treaties. But such priority use cannot be exclusionary, since exclusion is an act of appropriation. The model agreement thus includes this essential mandate: access to scarce resources shall be shared. How does the model agreement provide legal support for settlements in addition to commerce? It does so by definition. Exploitation of resources shall include, but is not limited to, A, the extraction of materials, B, the use of land for any other commercial activity, such as tourism and solar farms, and C, the use of land for non-commercial private activity, such as science and settlements. Clarifying that the definition of resource includes the land used for an activity allows us to create a comprehensive legal framework that will support all private activity on the Moon. So how would a central authority be organized under the Moon Treaty? Paragraph 8 of the model agreement is straightforward. All substantive decisions about the utilization of resources must be made by the state's parties. The agreement instructs them to create a governance process for making such decisions. This defers decisions that currently are not able to achieve consensus, such as the monetary sharing of the benefits of outer space development. Any such governance will have limited authority, as it can only make decisions within the scope of Article 11. That is, concerning the exploitation of resources, and only then if authorized to do so by the state's parties. In addition to diversity and polycentrism, limited central governance also promotes the principle of subsidiarity, that social and political decisions should be made as locally as possible. It is not necessary to resolve every issue right now. Indeed, it is impossible. But we must provide the best legal framework that we can at this time in order to extend the rule of law and a rational marketplace into outer space. The Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard provides a good example of polycentricity under a central authority. As explained by Alex Gilbert during the February IASC conference, Norway retains jurisdiction of Svalbard under an international treaty and is responsible for its governance. But Norway also has an obligation of non-discrimination. It must treat foreign nationals of signatories of the treaty exactly as it does its own nationals. Hence, foreign nationals have the same rights to use resources, conduct science, and do other activities in Svalbard as do Norwegians. Polycentricity works, but only if there is a limited central authority to provide legal support and protection. The proposed legal framework would also provide legal support for polycentric governance by non-governmental entities. For example, one or more nonprofit organizations in the United States could establish a settlement on the Moon under the authority supervision of U.S. federal government. But it would be largely self-governing concerning its own domestic laws. Under U.S. law, though not international law, a permanent settlement of U.S. nationals on the Moon would likely be considered an unincorporated self-governing territory. As such, it could form its own legislature and write its own laws, as was done in American Samoa. What would be the controlling law at any given site? In accordance with the OST and the Moon Treaty, the model agreement confirms that the controlling law at any location is the law of the state that authorized and supervises the activity of its nationals there. But paragraph 10 also protects the rights of individuals under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the rights of settlements to seek recognition as independent states. The rights of individuals and new societies might seem like science fiction but they are real concerns of present-day people and must be addressed in any international agreement. Otherwise, it will not garner widespread support and it will fail. At this moment in time, it is space law itself that needs capacity building. The current framework is inadequate, resulting in endless arguments over the meaning of outdated agreements. We can have a commons in outer space, and we can have polycentric diversity in our governance, but we must have an international framework of law that supports and protects both. The time has come to craft a new agreement that will facilitate the peaceful and sustainable development of outer space, one that will give people hope and inspiration as the nations of the earth begin to build a common future. In the third decade of the 21st century, it is the Moon Treaty, with the proper implementation agreement, that can provide the international framework of law that humanity needs to become a spacefaring species. For the full model agreement and related documents, please go to spacetreaty.org. Thank you very much for your time and attention.